Alexis, you disagree. You can be racist towards white people.
Oh, hell no. Oh my god. I don't think you can be.
Okay. Can you explain it, I guess?
What's there to be racist towards? Like, what?
They just...
The most you could say is like, I mean, I'm not even going to say
I'm
not, but there's really nothing you can be racist to them about. Like,
like, so what
what could you be racist towards a Hispanic person about then?
people, I mean, I can't say the racial slurs, but people are racist towards Mexicans.
Well, I think there's a difference between slurs and then also like thinking somebody less because of their race, and I think that's kind of what racism is. Not totally, but I think that's, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you just look down, I mean, if you just think that your race is better than their race, isn't that racism?
I guess.
I think
But
you can be
I don't care.
prejudiced to white people. I don't think you can be racist.
Yeah, I don't know why. That's
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Let's just grant that for a second. Is being prejudiced any more moral than being racist?
Both are wrong.
Oh, yeah,
But
so
there-
then
but-
if you're prejudiced towards white people, then it's just as bad as being racist towards them, right?
But there isn't a system in place to oppress white people.
Well, no, there's not. There's no,
Which is racism.
what system is in place to oppress you?
I'm privileged, so there's nothing.
Well, are you
nothing holding
white?
back. I'm half white, yeah.
Okay, so by that metric, you'd still be a minority, right?
Half, yeah, technically.
Yeah, so what
But-
system's in place? What system is in place to oppress any minority?
Well, we just have racial injustice in general, for one, and two, this country was built off the backs of slaves.
Almost every country on planet Earth was built on the backs of slaves, including most of the countries that the minorities come from right this second. So I don't know what that would have to do with racism.
Okay, but still, we still see racial injustice because of that in today's society.
Where?
With lots of things.
Like?
Like, well, this is a deep conversation I didn't think we were going to get into.
It doesn't feel that deep.
He has this conversation every single, like, twice a week. I don't know.
I've never watched this podcast, so I guess.
I just assume because it's on the paper. So I assume they have great arguments for this, that they've researched a lot. I don't know.
Well, there's a reason, like, DEI exists, right? Because
it's bullshit.
that's a view to have, sure.
But so I guess going back to you over here, who did say, are you also on board with the you can't be racist towards white people, or
I said that you can be prejudiced towards white people. I don't believe you could be racist.
why not?
Because this country was built off of white people or slaves, and white people put all these laws in place.
Can white people be racist towards Asian people,
Sure,
Hispanics?
sure.
These people were not slaves, though, so I'm a little confused. You said because of slavery, you can't be racist towards white people. What would
I
that
think
have
it
to do with like
affects
racism
most-
towards
I
like
think-
Vietnamese people, for example?
I think it does affect mostly black and brown communities.
Okay. So your definition of racism is racism equals prejudice plus power?
Can you repeat that?
Racism, what's your definition of racism then, if it can't apply to white people?
Well,
Can you close the
racism
door,
exists
Damon?
because there is an oppressor, white people who,
White people are the
Bill-
oppressors.
yeah.
Okay. And are you talking about just the USA, or are you talking globally?
I'm talking about the USA.
Okay. So like, for example, if there's a white person in, I'm trying to think of, I don't know, Nigeria. Would the local Nigerians who are black, can they be racist towards the white person?
Ooh, I've heard stories.
Okay, so yes, you agree. What about you?
Unsure.
What do you mean unsure? So Nigeria, which is like predominantly black. They hold the systemic power in the country. Black people hold the systemic power in Nigeria.
Okay, I guess in that case then.
Oh, and that using
maybe.
your still
But I'm
maybe.
talking about in just the United States.
Well, I think there's a difference
yeah, but
between
I'm testing
systematic
the logic.
racism and then just like racism.
No,
How about this?
Agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying about the systematic racism.
So how about this? What about, here's a hypothetical. Barack Obama, he was president from 2008 to 2016. So he was president for eight years. Let's say that in this hypothetical scenario, Barack Obama, he refused to hire a white janitor because the janitor was white. And this white, typically people who are janitors are typically not like within a high strata when it comes to socioeconomic status. So Barack Obama refuses to hire a white janitor because the janitor is white. Is that racism?
I think he has a prejudice towards that white person.
So just to be clear, okay, I'm using your definition, which is racism equals prejudice plus power, right? In this scenario, who has more power, Barack Obama or the white janitor? And it's not just, he doesn't just have power, he has systemic power too, because the executive branch of the United States government is a system. In fact, the United States is the most powerful country in the world. The executive branch, like he's the big honcho, he's the boss. So using this definition, would Barack Obama be racist in this example?
I don't think so.
But I'm literally, you said, okay, so does he have power?
He does have power.
Does he have systemic power?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Is he prejudiced? Okay. I'm literally meeting your definition, which is racism equals prejudice plus power. Why aren't you just conceding? You just can't say it. Is it? Oh, never mind. I shouldn't. I don't understand. I'm literally using your definition.
Okay, that's fine. You can have your view. I have mine.
I'm using your view. My view is that racism is that there has to be no component of power for you to be racist.
Are you discussing like the lack of trauma that like white people have racially and like
Yeah, how's that
makes it
relevant?
happen? Well, maybe
How would that be relevant?
I mean, I'd rather just have I'd rather hear her opinion.
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, well, my opinion is that this country it prioritizes white people, and it always has. And
How so?
white people always just have the upper hand inherently.
Well, it's only prioritized some white people.
To some white people,
So,
which white people?
Yeah, some white people. Like, for instance, it didn't prioritize the Irish, didn't prioritize the Italians. It didn't prioritize anybody from Norway who were considered to be lesser, almost all the Nordic nations. All Eastern Bloc nations, it didn't prioritize any of them. It basically only prioritized the English and the French.
But do they
That's
experience racial injustice based on the color of their
They
skin?
most definitely did, yeah.
Based off the color of their skin.
The injustices which were against the Irish were absolutely incredible. Same thing against the Italians. Essentially all non-French and British people, the injustices against them from the French and British who were here were, insane. I mean, they weren't even considered white. In fact, they didn't even consider them to be whites.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'm just kind of pointing out that if you say, well, it all is just applicable to white people, it's like, well, integration with whites really never actually fully was realized. So, I mean, that's why you still see kind of like these ethnic pride groups who celebrate in certain demographics Irish history. They have Irish pubs. They have Italian sectors, Italian quarters. There was never a full integration, even in what you would consider white society by whites. Like that just never really completely was realized and still isn't to this day.
So I have a question for you. In today's society, do you think you have white privilege?
No.
No, not at all.
No. What's the privilege?
Well, maybe not being in fear for your life when you're being pulled over by police officers, or if you're...
What about being in fear for your life if you're going through a predominantly minority neighborhood who play knockout games with white people? That doesn't sound like much of a privilege.
Also-
where is that happening?
Well, also as an Asian American, this should
there
be
are
like
still sundown towns. There's still places where black people, brown people can't go because of racism.
Yeah, and there's lots and lots of places where it's not safe for white people to go, where there's a heavy minority set too. So like you saying that.
But it's not systematic in
well,
that
hey,
sense.
hey, wait a second. This is some privilege that you have. It's like, okay, but the counter to this is, okay, but if I go to a lot of these neighborhoods, I will be targeted and attacked based on the color of my skin.
But it's
so
not
how's
systematic.
that a privilege?
Not systematic, just like she said.
No, systematically, yes. Yes.
It's not. How
of
is that
course.
systematically? That is
Because-
a person. That is
well,
a
wait,
one.
wait,
that is a
wait,
group
hang on
of
a second.
people, a
When you
small
say
group of people that have any
systematically,
like.
When you say systematically, you would have to show me the system,
Okay.
demonstrate for me any system
So
which is only tailored towards white people and against minorities.
well, I think we were kind of discussing like even the jail system and how she was mentioning, and now obviously
No, I do want to engage on that really quick. So you mentioned being in fear of your life when you're getting pulled over.
so
Right.
Some
Hold on.
people do have that
Yeah,
experience.
yeah.
Majority
So,
black and brown
so what if I were to
people.
tell you that, like, using the same metric of like the fear or the actual outcome when it comes to police encounters, that the discrepancy between men and women when it comes to police encounters is something like 8-fold greater than the discrepancy between whites and blacks. So, is this evidence that the police force is systematically sexist against men?
Potentially.
So, here's another stat. There are more white men killed by police officers than women of all races combined, including black women, including Hispanic women. Is this evidence that the police force is systematically sexist against men?
Don't men commit more crimes though?
Yeah.
Yeah. well,
You sure you want to make this argument?
I mean, I'm not sure.
Hold on.
Remember that if you're making the argument.
You sure you want to make that argument?
I am just.
Okay, is there a racial group that commits more crimes?
White people.
I'm not sure. I'm just saying. Don't.
I mean,
men,
you got to follow your logic to its end conclusion.
there was. I'm obviously white and I'm only kind of just learning about this topic, but there's also incentive back in the day, especially there was incentive after like slaves were liberated in America. There was incentive to imprisonate them because that's then free manual labor. So then now continuing in our country, like definitely not to the degree that it was back in the day currently, but there is incentive for imprisonating more people, especially people that were imprisonating more people that do free labor. Like there were more like black people imprisoned that do free labor in prison and like build things and do things of that nature. And then because of this now they're now labeled as like what's the word, they like a federal offense, like what's the
Felony.
word? Felony.
I'm not sure you
Felony.
have the requisite knowledge on this topic.
I admitted that the second I started, but just to pose a topic, we were also discussing this in class. I'm currently taking history class. Once again, I am white. I don't really know what I'm talking about. But then also, once you're a felon,
Did
you can't.
say
Can I finish?
imprisonating?
Huh?
Imprisonating?
That you can get manual labor out of imprisonating people. And that was kind of like, especially, like I said, not as much today, but
yeah,
back
I mean,
in
but
the
this
day,
was equally
there was
applied
incentive.
to white prisoners too. So I'm not sure. Like,
Yeah, but there's more. There's a
prisoners
lot
were
more.
also-
I'm not saying like all cops are bad.
Am I crazy?
But I'm
Is
just
imprisonating a word?
It is now.
I've literally never
Imprisonating?
heard
Let me Google that
imprisoning.
shit.
It's a word.
it's also
Hey,
a
language is
word.
fluid.
Imprisonating.
It's a word.
Impersonate.
I could be wrong, but also I'm just saying that there is
Incarcerating, I think is what you're
Incarcerating.
Incarcerating. There, I guess.
Look,
that
we've been
works.
here a long time. The words get jumbied.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, again, though, I mean, you're saying that this rate, when it comes to police encounters, it's way higher in the black community, but like we could just kind of shift this over to, well, okay, well, it's way higher between men versus women. Do you have anything to say for that? So would that be female privilege then?
Yeah.
Or can you just not concede on any point? You just got to be like, women are oppressed and white people are the oppressor and men are the oppressor and there's white privilege and male privilege.
I think
No.
there's privilege for both of the sexes.
Well,
and
hang on,
different.
Brian. There's disproportionate rates of imprisonating people, bro. It's like, you know how it goes. There's lots of impersonation going on.
But again, I guess I'll do one more hypothetical and we'll move on to the next thing. But I guess I'm trying to figure out one scenario in which racism can be towards white people. What about if there was I guess even using your definition here, there was an all-black publicly traded company and they refused to hire white people? Would that be racism?
No, but I think that's wrong.
Would it be racism if it was like all white? A company like the board of directors, all white, they just refused, company policy to refuse to hire black people. Would that be racist?
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm confused here. Okay, so like who has more power? Like I'm going to switch so let's go over to communism. So like you have the oh my God, sorry guys, this is fucking who has more power? The bourgeoisie or the proletariat? Oh my God, sorry, this is such a dumb argument.
It is.
No, but okay, so
You're discussing affirmative action.
I'm not discussing affirmative action. So,
I think that's
okay.
what you were hitting on.
So do you think like who has more power? Like the people that control, sorry, I don't even know where I'm fucking going with this. It's like the dumbest fucking communist fucking argument. Okay, so,
Definitely bourgeoisie has it, Brian.
the bourgeoisie or the proletariat?
The bourgeoisie.
Who has the power? The people who control the means of production? Or like the lowly workers who are just like the laborers? Who has the power? Okay, I'm trying to be intersectional here, but okay.
I think it's a little racist, but like it's not
A little, I don't understand. It's
like
racist.
not
It's either
hiring
racist or
somebody
it's not
because
racist.
of their skin color. I think we're trying to head away from that in general.
There's a threshold to these things.
Okay, question. How about this? Group of Hispanic men, they beat up a white guy because he's white. Racist or just prejudice?
Prejudice and fucked up.
Okay, reverse. Group of white men beat up Hispanic guy because they don't like, because he's
I
Hispanic.
think that stems from their racism.
Okay, how about this? This is an interesting one. A group of Asian people beat up a group of one white guy because he's white. Racist or prejudice?
A group of Asians beat up one
Yeah.
white guy. Prejudice, same thing.
What?
Now, to answer the earlier question to this, you asked me, how would that be systemic if you go to a neighborhood and people target you for your skin and beat you up and you're white? Well, this is how. This is how it's systemic. Because if you teach people that only one group or segmented group can be racist, even if you do the exact same thing they're doing to you, then you're creating a system in place in which you make it okay for them to do those things because they're considered less heinous. It's a privileged group. That's how it's systemic.
Well, if the country wasn't built off the backs of these minorities, then
Well, it wasn't built off your back,
no, it wasn't.
and it wasn't built off anybody who's alive back right now. Everybody who was here at the foundation is dead. All of them.
Well, that
Not a
trauma
single
is
one
still
of them is
perpetuating in
alive.
today's society.
And,
Obviously, that's why
and
racism
hang
exists.
on. And the truth of the matter is that in modernity, I would love to see you and anybody, in fact, point to examples of actual systems which are specifically targeting minorities at the behest of whites. I see no evidence for this in society anyway. I just see a privileged class who says, I can beat up white people because they're white, and that's not racist. But if they beat me up because I'm not white, that is racist. That creates a systemic problem, which a system is upholding to create a racial hatred towards a group, in this case, whites.
Do you think in the scenarios I described before, should it be a hate crime though?
Yeah. If you
Okay.
harm anybody based off the color of their skin, this should be a hate crime.
Should be a hate crime, but it still wouldn't be racism. So when you say like prejudice versus racism, is one worse than the other?
They're both equally
They're both
bad.
equally
There's just
bad.
a system in place. There's history.
Okay, so would you reject this definition? Racism, prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism by an individual, community, or institution against a person or people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial group or ethnic group. You disagree with this definition then?
No, keyword is institution.
No, it said or institution. It's not and institution or institution.
Okay.
The institution is not requisite because, for example, like if on an individual level you be racist? Can a white man be racist on an individual level to a black person? Into the mic.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's no institution there. It's an individual.
but it stems from the institution.
What
that's
institution?
the United States. United States government.
The United States government that was headed by a black man. That super racist government.
Do you think America's like a white supremacist nation?
I think white supremacists exist in our nation.
Yeah, I'm sure there's
unfortunately.
probably black supremacists too, but do you think it's overall a white supremacist nation?
I don't know about overall.
Okay. You mean the country that elected a black man to president for 2 terms in a row, back in 2008
great.
even?
That's great.
It's really a pretty racist country.
We're getting some progress.
I think people just kind of they vibrate off the echo of racism. Like it's like a reverberation throughout the generations. And while I feel like we're doing better with getting rid of that, it still echoes slightly through.
Yeah.
Well, then if that's the case, then if the idea is that the cast is that because there's an echo which happens due to the fact that there was some type of systemic oppression due to a group, the whites would be suffering the same exact thing. As the Barbary states kidnapped and enslaved them in the early part of our history nonstop. It was one of the most prolific and barbaric slave trades in the history of all of mankind. So bad, in fact, that they had to mobilize the United States Navy in order to put them down with orders of marque and reprisal. So if this is the case, that all you're looking at is the fact that heinous things can be done to a group, and because of that, they become oppressed systematically over time, then you'd have to apply that equally to all groups. I've never felt privileged in society, just nobody gives a shit, right? Nobody gives a shit. If Brian says he doesn't feel privileged in society, nobody gives a shit. They only give a shit when somebody who's not white says they don't feel privileged in society, then suddenly people care. It's interesting how all the other voices get drowned out, though, isn't it?
Really quick, I'm going to pull this up, then we're going to let some of the messages come through. Can you pull that up, Damien? So just Andrew referenced this. The Barbary slave trade involved the capture and selling of European slaves at slave markets in largely independent Ottoman Barbary states. European slaves were captured by Barbary pirates in slave raids on ships and by raids on coastal towns from Italy to Ireland and the southwest of Britain, as far north as Iceland, and into the eastern Mediterranean. Do they have dates on this? As late as the 18th century. So this is post American. This happened post American slavery, Andrew?
Yeah.
That is interesting. The
same thing. If you look up the oppression towards the Irish, which was heinous. The oppression. Essentially, the founders really only considered this a nation for Western Europeans. That's where they came from. They came from France. They came from England. They didn't really come from anywhere else. This idea that even if there was a such thing as white privilege, it would be universal is insane. Even to this day, people always forget about this. All sorts of white groups loathe each other. They hate each other's guts. Here in Michigan, for instance, the Dutch can't stand the Irish, and the Irish can't stand the Dutch. They can't. They hate each other because one's Catholic and the other one's Protestant. This happens all over the U.S. There's no different, by the way, than you'll see in Hispanic communities where Mexicans often will hate Puerto Ricans. Puerto Ricans will often hate Cubans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not like this idea of universalism. Oh, because you're white, you benefit from the privilege of the fact that it was French and Englishmen that came here. It's a way to group an identity together to attack it. And it's always been that way.